Hello, my name is Pikiss-Chris.
And I'm Bastardswordsman, and this is Scenes from a Podcast, the only podcast that has the Aether.
Yes, good reference. Yes.
Yeah,
You saved me from having to come up with a joke there on the spot, so I appreciate that.
I just thought of that on the spot, actually.
Oh yeah, that's very clever.
Yeah.
Uh yeah. Before we get to talking about today's movie, you got anything going on in your life right now, swordsman?
Not particularly. Still looking for a house in this crappy housing market, although this is the time of year when a bunch of new rentals pop up. But of course, winter is the time when you have the best deals because not as many people are renting places out, so they got to lower the prices to encourage people to, you know, get into that. But yeah, aside from that, uh nothing much. I recently actually bought the first 3 books of the Dune series.
Oh yeah. You said you
Yeah,
never
I
read
haven't.
it before, right?
No, I am planning on getting into that soon. But also, there were a few video game announcements recently that are somewhat relevant to me anyway. So, uh, 2 of them, well, there are 3, all from the same company, Atlas, but yeah, 2 of them are both related to the Persona series. Um, there's going to be a remake of Persona 3.
Persona 3. Yeah.
Yeah.
I I have never played any of the Persona games. Uh I know they're a spin-off of the Megami Tensei games, of which
Yes, that is true.
I have played one Megami Tensei game. I cannot remember what number it was. I remember the
Um,
general plot.
I remember it was a Shin Megami Tensei 4.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
That was when I played the one where they're like in feudal
Well, don't spoil that. Yeah. Um, yeah, that one's like in feudal Japan, sort of.
feudal Europe, Japan, a version of
Yeah.
Japan where everyone's Christian. But
Well, yeah. Now that's a dystopia.
yeah,
But
all
anyway, Persona 3, I first played it when I was pretty young. I think I was like 12 when I played it, and it's one of my favorite games. So, um, but it's weird because, like, I feel like I'm really just a boomer now because if I was 16, I would have been so, well, actually, no. If I was like 16, I would have been excited. If I was like 18, I would have been pissed. Like, what the hell? They're remaking one of my favorite games. It's going to be a big piece of shit. But like, now I'm like, I don't even really care. I'm like, okay.
I'm generally of the opinion that remakes are bad for game preservation, mostly because like they make such drastic what we really need is like ports most of the time, just like straight ports of the games as they were originally released, with maybe like quality of life improvements where it's necessary. But by and large, the rest of the gaming community doesn't seem to feel the same way. They just seem to be like, man, I can't wait for them to release the same game, but it's a different game. Which is like,
Yeah.
if that's
Um,
why not just make a sequel if that's the case? the idea of the remake just makes no sense to me for like games anyway.
Yeah. In general, well, I have kind of mixed opinions on like film remakes. I think some of those can be done well enough, but like game remakes, I'm far more skeptical about. Like, first off, it just seems like a waste of resources because, yeah, why can't they just like make a sequel or just an entirely new IP? Like, I'm like the game industry, like, I don't really play many games these days, but just from, I guess I feel kind of like an outsider now, but from an outsider's viewpoint, it's just why would you like remake something and keep like rehashing the same shit instead of, I don't know, coming up with some new ideas? But I don't know. I mean, they can reuse assets and they can bank off the pre-established reputation of the original game. But yeah, my opinion is that if you play the remake of the game, that's not a substitute for the original. You're playing the remake. You're not playing the game, the original game. They're, in most cases, they tend to be like completely different games.
Like the changes are just too drastic, you know?
Yeah.
Like the only like video game remake off the top of my head is like that's really any good. That's like a remake that has a reason to exist is Resident Evil for the GameCube, like the remake of the
Yeah.
original game.
I
But
think the Resident Evil, at least like, I heard the remake of 3 was pretty lame, but I like for the most part, I think the Resident Evil remakes, while they're not like perfect, like I feel like they're pretty all right because they're trying to be completely different experiences from the originals in the first place. So they're just trying, like, something sort of new using the groundwork of something like original. But like, I don't know, like the remake of Resident Evil 2 is like so different that, like, but to an extent where it's actually interesting, and it does feel like a completely different game and not just like some Frankenstein's monster like reanimation of like the corpse of an old game. But anyway, I'm just rambling. Uh yeah, Persona 3 is being remade. Now, Persona 3, it's not a perfect game, but it's definitely a very unique game. It's its own experience. Um I don't think the remake will really add anything to that experience. It's just pretty much updated visuals, and it has like, I believe it's in the same engine as Persona 5. So it's just Persona 3 but with like a current, well, for Atlas's standards, a current gen coat of paint.
yeah, um I just feel like for me, I can't really say anything about Persona or like the state of because I at the very least I know that like there haven't been a lot of ports for the older Persona games, so people probably weren't able to like get like the original Persona 3, but I guess maybe they'll be able to get something out of this like remake.
Well, I think a lot of the PS2 games are still relatively easy to find. At least they were a couple years ago. But yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. Like I just it's just such a big pet peeve of mine with the gaming industry because like it's either like a completely different game from the ground up, so it's like why wasn't this just a sequel, you know?
Or even just its own game.
Yeah, or even just its own game, or it's like the updated visuals this is the thing that really pisses me off. The updated visuals are made with the express purpose of showing off graphical quality rather than conveying mood or atmosphere like the original games. Like,
My least favorite have to be the Yakuza games because, like, they're just like the lazy way of remaking games. They don't redo any of the animations or anything. Like all the cutscenes are the exact same, but just with like newer gen models. So you have this really weird like uncanny valley effect where the characters in the cutscenes are moving like PS2 characters would, but they look like PS4 characters, so it looks really fucking weird. And they didn't like redo any of the, facial expressions or really anything like that. And they also just copy paste the combat systems of the newer games and just plaster them over the, you know, old games.
yeah, I mean, talking about like weirdly unfitting visuals, like the uh the insane trilogy for Crash Bandicoot and like a lot of the Zelda remasters and remakes just have these styles that just clash with the original in the mood because they're made to show off to graphics. They're not made to like be true to like the tone that was in those original games, like the polygonal style of Crash Bandicoot just doesn't work when it has these dumb looking fur HD textures on it.
Yes, some people like don't seem to get that visuals aren't just like the amount of polygons in something, but also like the aesthetics of something. Like that can go a long way. Like a game that just like has a very unique art direction can look a lot better than a game that looks like hyper realistic but is just like brown and like boring. Like
It's
it reminds me of something that the gaming Brit said, and actually in his Crash Insane Trilogy video. Like it doesn't look better; it just looks like different.
I'd say it looks worse, honestly. Just
Yeah, I mean, like that's a matter of opinion, but that's definitely still like valid.
I have definitely more to say about when it comes to the Zelda game because call me a normie if you want, but that's like my fave video game franchise, and it's just like with Link's Awakening for the Switch and the Wind Waker HD especially, just like these really cartoony stylized visuals with like realistic lighting and lens flare. It just on Wind Waker, it just like desaturates all the color that was original and makes it a much more boring and incongruous game. Like why is this the lighting we're choosing for like a bright colorful Looney Tunes style game? And then
Yeah,
like they try to do one for one with Link's Awakening to like the sprites of the original, but like what works for sprite animations doesn't work for 3D models. So everything in that remake looks like a Funko Pop.
uh, yeah. Chris is a really big Zelda fan. I've seen him in person, and he has like the green Triforce shirt and the light brown shorts.
I don't wear the khakis. I've never I have not worn that shirt past middle school, so yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so we got into a tangent about remakes, but the next two things will go by a lot faster. So there's also yet another Persona 5 spin-off because there haven't been enough of those. But
From just one
it's like
game.
Yeah, there are multiple spin-offs of Persona 5.
Was it that popular? Or
Yeah, I mean it sold like several million copies. Persona 4 had a lot of spin-offs too, though. It had a fighting game. No, actually, it had two fighting games. It had a dancing game. It had a crossover game with Persona 3 that was like another like style of dungeon crawler. Had all sorts of shit. But new Persona 5 spin-off. It's a tactical RPG, so you move across a grid and you move towards enemies and you then unleash attacks on them. I guess the most popular game for someone who doesn't know what I'm talking about would be Fire Emblem, but looks pretty lame. That's all I'm going to say about that.
see, I thought of Mario and Rabbids.
Um, oh, I completely forgot that was a thing.
That was a weird ass crossover.
Yeah. And the last announcement was another Atlas RPG. Atlas are, of course, the creators of Shin Megami Tensei and Persona and all that shit. And it's a completely new IP, but they're making just a medieval fantasy game. And I think it has like a new title, but the original title was Re Fantasy, and I think it was announced. It was announced a long time ago. I think it was like 2016, and there was no news about it. And finally, now there's a trailer, and they boom, apparently coming out next year, and it looks kind of interesting.
So, re fantasy. What genre is it, or do we not know yet?
I mean, what do you think from the title?
Probably some sort of like. No, I mean like game fantasy, not like.
It's just going to be an RPG, I think.
Okay, then. That was, yeah, I guess that should have been obvious, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
Anyway, aside from that, I don't really have anything to talk about.
Uh, I saw the newest. I saw Across the Spider Verse in theaters about a week ago. So,
Did you see the version with the bad audio?
was there a version with the bad audio?
Apparently, a lot of people were complaining that apparently it was only in some theaters that where like there were a lot of scenes where the dialogue was really quiet and the music was like drowning it out.
I'm not sure if that's just like a different version. I mean, I was able to like hear the dialogue fine, but like I do think there's a general trend in modern movies where like the sound mixing is just bullshit because because the music is it drowns out everything else. So maybe that's what was going on and I was just too invested in the goody things to notice, but like maybe I just got lucky, I don't know. Uh no. I mean there were a few points where like I couldn't quite catch what a character was saying, but that probably had something to but that character like had an accent and like was speaking really fast, so like that
Oh, so you're just it was just a racist thing.
no, it wasn't like a racist thing. Like they just had an accent.
Yeah, I was just messing with you.
You know? It was like a they also like mumbled a lot, so that contributed. But yeah, I liked the movie. Uh it's sort of obviously a lot of people have seen it by now. I won't spoil it, but it did have a very controversial ending, which I think isn't something you see in a lot of kids films or a lot of animated films at least, and
Yeah, as far as I know, the only controversy about the ending is that there isn't one.
Yeah. Uh, I was trying to finagle my way around that, but
I don't think that's really a spoiler.
yeah. I guess I don't know. Basically, it ends on a
Like we've known
cliffhanger.
there's going to be a direct sequel for like a while, and then it's going to come out pretty
Oh,
soon.
did we? I didn't keep up with anything outside of the trailers.
Yeah, it's not even. It's coming out not even supposedly not even a full year from now.
Okay then. Well, I don't usually follow. I don't like follow like film announcements like religiously. I mean, but like probably sound like a dumbass right now. Yeah, basically, I thought it was fine. I didn't. I didn't really feel like it. How do I like organize my thoughts? I thought it executed the cliffhanger really well because it kind of felt like um a film split into two halves, but it also sort of felt like it was a natural end point for there to be a cliffhanger, because the way it's structured like the climax is about to happen, but then it hits you with the twist that what you thought would happen didn't happen. It's hard to explain this without like spoiling, but take my word for it.
All right, I'll be able to see it soon.
Yeah. Uh,
How does it compare to you like with the first Spider Verse?
I mean, I've heard some people say they prefer the original, and it's like the middle portion of like a 3 act movie now. So 3 act story. I mean now. So I guess technically I'd say Into the Spider Verse is better because it's like a good self-contained story, but like so much of this film is like spent on like quiet character moments that I mean it's still high energy, but there's just a much more somber tone to it in it. And I think it takes more risks with like the narrative and just has more
Yeah,
interesting things to say about Spider-Man on a meta level and yada yada. So just felt really like even if it's not as good, I liked it a lot more.
I mean, on the movie review site that I use, well, one of them on Letterboxd, it's apparently considered the best movie ever made. So,
I mean, a lot of that is hype, but I wouldn't say
yeah.
it's unearned hype. Like these, the, the original Spider Verse did sort of change the trajectory for like Western mainstream animation, and no, other films have been good, following that trend, like Puss in Boots and Mitchell's versus the Machines. But I don't know. I just think it's interesting that like none have topped the original Spider Verse except its own sequel with regards to like what can be done with stylistic visuals.
Yeah.
Uh, Other than that, dreading the supposedly oh, dreading the supposedly to come Illumination Nintendo collaborative Legend of Zelda movie.
Is it Illumination?
I I think it's in the negotiation stages. It's all rumors at this point, but the rumors say it's Illumination, and well, that sounds
Link's gonna go into the cave and he's gonna get a sword and he's like, "What? Old men giving kids swords? This is just happening now?" Okay.
yeah.
Well, that just happened.
Well,
Well, excuse me,
yeah.
princess.
Oh my
all that shit is gonna happen.
Yeah. Honestly, even if like uh, obviously like a company like Illumination is worst case scenario for a Zelda movie because like their tone is so incongruous with like Zelda. Like it
Yeah.
worked for a Mario movie because Mario is a pretty safe, like simple, like IP to begin with. So really all Nintendo had to do
Well,
was like rein in like the worst of Illumination's impulses. But like
well, to be fair, these Zelda games can vary in tone.
yeah. But generally they're like high fantasy with sort of like a mature-ish edge with like a little bit of like silly goofiness, and that tone is a lot easier to get across in a video game where there's like player interaction and narrative is more so based on like things the player interacts with than it is in like a conventional 1 hour and a half like animated kids film.
I'll be honest, I haven't seen the Mario movie, but I did hear that song, um, the Peaches song, and it was pretty garbage. I hated it.
I mean, it's like a joke song, but I
Yeah,
guess
but it's not funny.
uh, I get what I mean. Okay, whatever. Uh, to me at least, like I'm I'm probably saying this from like a cringy fanboy purist perspective, but like even if Illumination wasn't the one making this movie, I would not want Nintendo to make a film adaptation of Zelda because this company has proven to me that they care more about brand integrity than like good storytelling. You know,
Legend of Zelda movie, the script writer is George R. Martin.
it like what I'm trying to get across here is that like Nintendo, like even if they got like a coalition of like fans to like make that movie, they would be reined in from like adapting what would truly be worth adapting from like any of the Zelda games, like Link's journey from child to adulthood and Ocarina of Time, or any of the mature themes found in Majora's Mask and Wind Waker and the series ethos or whatever. All of that would be on the cutting room floor because corporate Nintendo probably has a very different idea of what makes Zelda Zelda than its own
Yeah,
fan base does. So they would 100% butcher it, trying to preserve brand integrity in big old air quotes.
yeah. I don't see the point in what in even having a movie about Zelda when you can everything that you can get from Zelda is just in the games.
Yeah. Now,
But you know what movie I didn't mind watching?
one that gave us Into the Ether.
Yeah, it would be my recommendation from last time, all about Lily Chou Chou from the director Shunji Iwai. So, mind if I just transition into that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, well, so this is a pretty interesting film. It's a coming of age story, but it's not like a very typical one. It's pretty dark in tone, but it's also very dreamy. And it follows a few characters. There's the main character, and then there's the antagonist, Shusuke. but both of them are fans of a fictional pop singer called Lily Chou Chou, who in the film was born on the same day that John Lennon was killed. And basically, the lives of these characters are kind of shitty, but they find solace both in the music of Lily Chou Chou, but also in connecting on a fan community online pertaining to Lily Chou Chou. And the main character, Yuichi, is the one who runs the fan community about, which is, I guess you could say, all about Lily Chou Chou. And yeah, the characters go through some big arcs, and yeah, what did you think about all about Lily Chou Chou? Spoilers, by the way.
Yeah. Uh, I did think it was interesting how the film kind of starts out with like this motif of the chat room, of like the words being typed out and sort of appearing on screen, sort of the things that they say in private and the sort of perspectives they have juxtaposed with like their lives and the situations they find themselves in that inform them and that inform their interpretations of like this musician that they're listening to. I thought that was interesting. I'll admit I was sort of worried I wouldn't really like the film for like the first few minutes because uh I wasn't sure where the film was going. It wasn't until like I'm not sure if this is the midway point or like maybe the end of Act 1 or the beginning of Act 2 where we have this flashback sequence showing how these kids initial relationship with each other as friends sort of fell apart on summer vacation and how they sort of became who they are in the present based on like really bad traumatizing experiences.
Yeah, this film is just sort of about traumatizing experiences and the effects they can have on people and how they can change people, especially at such a formative age. Because the characters are supposed to be in middle school, like they're like 14 or something like that.
Yeah. I do think it's interesting. This film has a very cynical perspective on adult authority figures and how little comfort they can like give to children in like difficult situations that they aren't emotionally equipped for. How like they have this like bubble around them that prevents them from seeing children as anything other than like innocent idiots basically that don't have any real problems. And the worst any of these kids get into like some really fucked up shit like gang violence and like forced prostitution, but like the worst anyone finds out about is like petty theft, and they all they can really do about it is like shame and beat them without like providing any guidance.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the adults don't really play much of a role at all in the film, honestly.
Yeah, i I think that's a deliberate choice though. Like
Yeah.
uh more to what I was worried about when I first saw the film, like obviously this is a film told from the perspective of really young preteens who are like
Not
obs-
preteens, but young teenagers.
young teenagers like obsessed with music. Excuse me, sorry. And obsessed with like a musician, and it sort of opens with like this monologue about like how this Lily Chou Chou character sort of is inspired by the ether and how that like makes her like deep and spiritual when it's clear that the boy writing all this just has like a weird sort of crush on her that he's like too dumb to realize he has. And I wasn't sure if the film was going to like lean into and justify that perspective as something that's valid in order to appeal to like teenagers, or if it was going to like seriously critique it. So I was
Well, I don't
worried.
know if he has a real like legitimate crush, but he's a stan, as you would say.
Yeah, I guess I don't know. Like
He's like those crazy K-pop fans.
yeah. Well, you could argue that a lot of that is fueled by like prepubescent crushes too, but
Well, yeah.
yeah. So I didn't really know if the film was going to be like legitimately clever or just pretentious until we got to like that flashback scene. And actually a lot of the film has more to do with like what happens in their school lives or in the realm of their criminal activity than it does like the musician and their fan the fan base around it. Like that's just more so to like contextualize how they interpret the world around them. And
Yeah, well, the film isn't really just about the power of music or whatever, so I don't think you're necessarily supposed to just like agree with what the characters say at face value, but it's just like sort of, like they're very young children and they're basically like trying to come up with their own pretentious like philosophies and
yeah,
stuff and trying to find out like the meaning of the art they're consuming.
there is a scene like near the end where we they're at like a concert getting ready to go inside, and there's this guy outside who's like a uber creepy pretentious fanboy. And I thought that like he was going to be revealed as one of like the forum members or something, but it that didn't happen. But it does sort of illustrate that the film is a lot more self-aware than I was worried it wasn't going to be.
Yeah.
uh what did you think of the film generally?
I really liked it. I didn't really know exactly what it was going for at first, like, but it's like a very like sort of downer of a movie, even though it's not like portrayed as like excessively dreary. It's like the whole film is like has this sort of nostalgic haze to it, um, which is definitely intentional. Like it's definitely a film that can be enjoyed by like sort of older people, like reflecting on their teen years. But it's definitely a film of like the current generation. Uh, but it's also like about the limitations of nostalgia and how I don't know, like it's also just about the realities of life.
Yeah. um the antagonist, I forget his name. I
Shusuke.
Who's Shusuke? Yes, thank you. um he it is sort of interesting how he's kind of like a brother figure at first to like Yuichi until he like has a near death experience. And where like he this bit of fauna in like the wild of Okinawa, which is where their vacationing is, almost kills him, and it's only by chance that he lives. And then he sees like a guy, another tourist that they kept running into like who seemed very happy at first. He basically commits suicide by the end. You get the
That was
sense,
like a pretty. Never mind.
yeah, you get the sense that like that experience changed him, and it sort of informs why he became what he is in the present. You know, just this bully and this thug. You know, he's not just like give me your lunch money kind of dipshit. He's like a moral nihilist who,
He just like sees the futility of life and
yeah,
stuff.
yeah. And again, like the adults are useless, so there isn't anyone to really guide him or like explain these things to him in a way that like might have like kept him from turning in what he turns into.
Yeah. It's like kind of vague, like how those events like influence him, but it's not really just one or the other that I feel instigates the change, but kind of both because he has this near death experience, and normally you'd find out, you'd appreciate your life more after nearly losing it, but then immediately after that, he sees someone throw their own life away. Kind of like a big juxtaposition there. I do really like how the whole like Okinawa trip is just done in a found footage style. And I saw this movie with another friend, and they thought the film was going to turn into a horror movie at that point.
Really?
Yeah, which I mean would have been interesting because it happens like almost 40 minutes into the film.
Lily Chou Chou is gonna get you, kids. She's gonna kill you with her stands.
Lily Chou Chou knows what you did last summer.
Yeah. She's the one who threw the fish.
Yeah, the film's pretty long. It's like 2.5 hours, and I feel like a lot of good stories that like following multiple characters tend to be this long. And the characters have like pretty well defined arcs. But what's interesting is that like both leads have like downward arcs, and they both like become more immoral over time. But it's more just like the antagonist is just like is so much worse that he just makes the protagonist seem not as bad in particular, which is why we can still like stomach following him, because pretty much like he's like a loser, but then he like ends up cracking and murdering well, obviously Shusuke, but yeah.
It is I think it is interesting uh how Shusuke is revealed to be one of the forum members, and how he like uses this let's meet up and reveal ourselves at the big concert as a way just to fuck with Yuichi. Because I think it was like earlier in the film he like actually like bullies him for like being into that music. Like he forces him to masturbate.
Yeah.
Full on like molestation there, but I don't really get how he is like the implication that he joined the forum just to like build up to that moment, or was he like a closet fan or something, because he doesn't seem like particularly embarrassed to be there, and it can't be an act because he did
Well,
seem
he was definitely a fan, but he probably just hated the one kid.
maybe, I don't know.
It's definitely a film like relationships with people like on the internet is definitely a big part of the film, and that was something that I feel a lot of Japanese media especially kind of effectively covered during this sort of time period.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was like the when like the internet was young enough so that we weren't like completely familiar with it, but it was like widespread enough that most people knew what it was.
It is interesting because I don't really have much context for like what online friendships are like for teenagers or tweens or whatever. I didn't really start having online friends until I like got older and wanted to like start pursuing relationships, but for most of my life I sort of avoided that because it's like I don't know, just most other people I met online just seemed fucking annoying to me.
Yeah, there are definitely a lot of weirdos online.
Yeah. Fucking you ever heard of this weirdo called Bastard Swordsman?
No, but I can tell just from the name that he's, well, let's put it lightly, an eccentric.
Yeah. Fucking likes films like Lily Chou Chou, like come on, dude.
You know, what the hell?
Yeah.
Um, yeah. I feel like that like last scene. Well, the last. I mean, obviously, it's important to the film, but um, it kind of shows that you know, even if you think you know, I mean, it can still apply to real life relationships, but like you can think you know someone, but like online, but in real life, they can be like completely different from what you expected. And yeah, like the the like even though the characters all like bond over the same musician, um like Yuichi and Shusuke's relationship doesn't really end on a good note, whereas in the very last scene of the film, Yuichi and the one girl who he talked about, Lily Chou Chou with, um, they kind of like bond over like music, but it feels more genuine there. But they got to actually be there and listen to the music together.
Yeah, it did seem that is interesting. Uh do you want to talk about how this film handles that like one very controversial aspect of it?
Um, yeah, yeah. The film has like a couple a few pretty dark moments, but like definitely the darkest moment is that there's a gang rape scene. Yeah, but I feel like it was done pretty tasteful, like relatively tastefully, partially because it doesn't occur on screen. But
It is again, I think it's interesting. It is shot in that found footage style that the flashback scene is shot in,
yeah,
you know.
that's a good point. Like some of the most harrowing scenes are like filmed in like a more intimate style. Um, and yeah, like there are like three scenes in particular that I can think of. Well, of course, there's like the forced masturbation scene, which is pretty, out there. But there are like three other like really like kind of disturbing scenes that pop to mind. One is in Okinawa where it shows the guy committing suicide, and you see the aftermath and like how you know blood is leaking out on the ground and it's pretty grim. Then there's the rape scene, and then there's the scene showing the aftermath of another suicide, and it's like they're very like dark moments, but they're not like it's not like very over dramatic. It just feels like another scene in the film, which is interesting.
I think what makes it work is the fact that it is kind of so detached, almost like neutral point of view. It yeah, it doesn't like dramatize it. Like it trusts you to be able to like recognize that it's horrible that this is happening and that it's horrible it's happening to kids simply by your common sense. Like it doesn't feel the need
How
to
am I
like
supposed to know that this is bad if the film doesn't tell me it's bad?
yeah, it exactly. It doesn't treat it as like there's this scene where one of the girls, Suda, I think her name is, I probably pronouncing that wrong, uh, who's like a forced prostitute for like the gang, is like having this casual conversation about how she's just kind of resigned herself to what's happened to her and is like casually discussing with one of the people pimping her out if her cutting her hair or getting fat will make it so that she's let go. It doesn't really beat you over the head with she's miserable. Like obviously she is, but
Yeah.
it still shows that she can have moments of happiness even if she is traumatized, and even if it doesn't like stop her from committing suicide in the end, that wasn't just her default sake because she's a character in a narrative trying to like convey information to the audience. Felt very naturalistic to me.
Yeah. It also just sort of like fits the themes of like coming of age because like when you're a kid growing up, you don't really like you aren't like familiar with a lot of situations like that, and you kind of just sometimes shit just happens and you just sort of have to feel like, oh yeah, this is wrong.
Yeah. I will say that the actual like suicide scene itself, not that it actually does show a suicide, but it does show like this scene of her like flying a kite with like some music, some happy Lily Chou Chou tunes playing over it, and the end of that montage is just her like her after the deed, and I felt that was kind of manipulative, just a little bit corny, like very on the nose, just like her innocence gone forever.
Well, I feel like it's more just about how like music like can't like heal everything and can't like cover everything up.
I mean, I guess, but like I
I
don't know.
don't know about Innocence Gone. I think at that point in the film, a lot of innocence had already been lost.
Yeah, it just that was the vibe I got from it, So, uh, let me
Yeah.
see. I don't know. I don't know if I'm one to talk because like I don't know about you, but like I'm kind of writing a novel. I've mentioned this a few times, and I'm trying to like explore similar subjects of like assault and like the effects it leaves on people. So I don't know if I can like really like talk about anything in a very critical way unless I'm very fucking careful and like actually smart about what I'm doing. But
Yeah.
generally speaking, outside of that scene with the kite, I thought it was very well handled because just very neutral point of view.
Um, there apparently is an extended version of the film, but it was lost, and it's like 10 minutes longer. And apparently there is like an extended rape scene, and I'm kind of glad that that version isn't the version that I saw.
Yeah, I mean, even outside of like whether or not it would make the film better, that's just not something I want to see on screen anyway. So,
Yeah. Um, One interesting thing about the filming of the film is that it was filmed with a Sony Cine Alta, I believe is how you pronounce it. That's the camera that was used to film um, this film, and it was the first film ever shot with it, like ever.
really?
And yeah, and to it's an early like digital film. I think the first film shot in digital was The Phantom Menace. I think maybe no, it wasn't. But yeah, they didn't really start doing that until like the mid to late '90s. But
Wasn't the
so
wasn't the Phantom Menace like shot like a year or two before this film? Like it didn't come out in theaters. I
yeah,
mean, yeah,
yeah, I think that was '99.
yeah.
But this was the first film filmed with the Cine Alta camera, and like to name some other movies shot with the same camera, well, of course you have Spy Kids 3D Game Over. Um, but Tron like oh, Avatar was shot with the same camera.
James Cameron's blue furry movie.
And James Cameron's Avatar. Um, I mean, honestly, not that many films were filmed with the same camera, but that's just a little tidbit that this is the first film that was ever shot with the same kind of camera that Avatar was shot with.
That is interesting. I mean, it does again like the film is sort of shot in like a resolution that makes it feel like even in the films without like obvious found footage elements, it feels shot on a home camera to me.
Yeah,
Uh, it's actually almost like hard to notice at first that that transition from like the way the film is usually shot to like the to like
the
that
found footage.
yeah, it's very subtle. Like it helps it sort of feel like it's all in the same world, even if it's like happening from a different point of view, like someone watching it well after the fact that it happened while everything else is like presented as happening as is.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely like handheld cinematography.
Do you have
Um, Are you familiar with Hideaki Anno?
Daki Ano? I don't think so.
He made the Evangelion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but he made a few live action films, and the director of this film plays the main character in one of Hideki Anno's live action movies.
Really? Which movie is that? I'm looking through his film.
It's the English title is called Ritual.
Ritual.
Yeah, from 2000. But yeah. Um, Shunji Iwai is like definitely like an indie director, but he's considered to be like one of the best like Japanese directors from like the late '90s and the 2000s. And a lot of his films tend to be about teenagers.
Looking through his filmography here. Love Letter, Picnic, Last Letter. Apparently, he remade Last Letter like 2 years later.
Well, I think there's Love Letter and then there's Last Letter, which are different.
I'm looking at it on Wikipedia. His filmography says that
Oh, never mind. Yeah.
2018 Last Letter, and then 2020 Last Letter again. So either like a remaster or a remake.
Oh. Oh, 2018 Last Letter was Chinese, but the 2021 is in Japanese.
Oh, okay then. Oh yeah.
But they're both directed by the same guy, which is interesting.
Do they use like different actors, or is it just like a?
I would assume, yeah. But yeah, he has a big filmography and he has a lot of films that I'm interested in. But yeah. Any other thoughts on the film?
I will say, I was kind of surprised how little the film itself had to say about like the music industry or like the idol industry or whatever, because Lily Chou Chou and her band seem like they're ripe to be like a satire of that sort of culture, and it does get its little dig at like the tween fans who put it on a pedestal and like the older folks who like take it too seriously, but it's not like a big focus of the film. It's mostly just like a background thing. Lily
Yeah.
herself doesn't even like appear on screen. We never actually like see her. The whole climax happens because the main character can't see her. So
Yeah, I really do love that scene where he has to see the concert from the outside and it's just him sitting or standing in front of the screen. That's like a really powerful image.
I do love how like the screen sort of stops projecting like a few seconds into as he's looking into it, like almost like he's not really like he didn't even get to see it that way.
It is a bit misleading that the film is called All About Lily Chou Chou, but it's not just all about Lily Chou Chou.
Yeah, it is. The film should have been called fucking Fuck All to Do with Lily Chou Chou. Am I right, fellas? Am I right?
So true.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like this film. Generally not a big fan of like coming of age stories about teenagers and romance, but I don't know, this one didn't feel as exploitive and pandering as I was worried it was going to be. It's actually very thoughtful, the way it like tackles its subject matter, and I like how it sort of ends on this ambiguous note where it's like there isn't really any resolution to Yu Chi's like arc. He's just kind of left
I mean,
empty inside and not really knowing where to go from there in his life.
he did get away with murder, which is cool.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I really liked the film. It's not like the easiest film to analyze. Like it definitely is kind of ambiguous, and I think it could for me anyway, it could benefit from repeat viewings. And like it's definitely a film with a lot to chew on. It has a very unique style though. And I do sort of like very dreamy films and also films about youth portrayed in this sort of way. It reminds me a little bit of the manga of this one manga creator called Inio Asano, who also tends to make stuff about not always young people, but usually like younger people, and it tends to be like realistic, but also like, and also somewhat abstract, but kind of like dark as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really like the film. Just on a first viewing, I would give it like a strong 8, I think. I really liked it.
I'm gonna probably go with an 8 too. It doesn't seem like mind blowing enough to get like a full 10 out of 10 or even like a 9, but it's not weak enough to like get anything lower than that. you know
Yeah.
that is
Um,
insightful commentary.
yeah. I really like the film. If you want to see the film, it's on Tubi, which is a free site, but it just has ads. You can also watch it on Amazon Prime Video for free, but also with ads. But if you have a Canopy subscription, like if you're, part of a library that a member of a library that is affiliated with Canopy, or you're a college student affiliated with Canopy, then there's a free subscription service you can see it on, or you can just rent it on Amazon or YouTube or something. Um, Unfortunately, the Blu-ray of this is currently not in print, or out of print. Yeah, it's out of print. Only a DVD right now, which sucks.
So yeah, uh good movie. Filled us with the ether, made me
Full boy, full of ether,
yeah. I
plenty of mana to cast magic spells.
Yes, I will become a wizard in an RPG, and I will heal you whenever you are weak. uh I will be there for you to lean on, my little
That means a lot to me.
my little
Thank you, my friend.
chosen. Okay, I'm gonna stop. Yeah, good movie. So probably a weird thing to go from a film like this, but next time, I don't know. I'm in the mood for like. I just want to fucking watch Jurassic Park, so that's my choice.
Oh wow, yeah. I haven't seen that in a while.
Yeah. Uh, I don't know, cause like I think the film itself. I don't want to get into talking about it right now, but I think the film itself is okay, but I don't know that I think there's like plenty to talk about with its impact on the industry.
Well, I'm definitely more excited than if you had picked Jurassic World.
Jurassic World. Oh my god. Never.
One of the trilogies ever made.
Yeah. That was Chris Pratt's warm up for the Mario movie, don't you know? Uh
True.
Hopefully Bryce Dallas Howard will make a good Zelda in the upcoming Zelda movie. So, yeah. Be seeing you next time.
All right. Next time, Jurassic Park. Peace.
Peace.